Welcome to Access Your Leadership, where we share inspiring career stories and talk about ways you can level up your own leadership potential. I'm your host and coach, Akeem Lakhdar, and today I'm here with Andrew Coplon. Andrew is the founder of Craft Beer Professionals, a national network dedicated to the growth and betterment of the craft beer industry. CBP, as it's called, unifies and elevates the industry through educational content, peer-to-peer dialogue, and unique community events, one of which I had the pleasure of being on recently, actually. So, Andrew, it's so great to have you here, buddy.
Akeem, thanks for having me. I always enjoy our conversations. What you just read is just a fancy way to say we enjoy bringing people together to build relationships and for learning together.
I love it. Yep. And I mean, community building. When I was at Harvard, I was the community building guy. I mean, I was scooping ice cream at socials. I was always bringing people together for happy hours. I was part of every committee I could be. And I was sort of unofficially dubbed the community building guy because I think there's such power in community, not just on the learning side, but actually on the relationship building side and feeling the support and, seeing the oneness of what we're doing together, especially in what you do in the industry of craft brewing. So, I'm thrilled to have you here. I'm looking forward to this conversation. As you mentioned, as always, I always enjoy our conversations. And I want to start off with a leadership win. So, what's something for you that you would love to share has been a win for you, either personally or professionally, that's top of mind for you?
Yeah, thanks, Hakeem, for asking. I know we'll dive into it in just a little bit, but when I started Craft Beer Professionals, I was the only person in the organization. We've grown it to 17,000 people across the country. And, we began essentially as a little community on the internet in the weird world of the beer internet. And we've started over the years doing in-person workshops. And, it's always interesting when you take something that had its base virtually and bring it in real life, but we knew there was value in it. And what we started doing a couple of years ago, we launched some workshops called CBP Connects. And unlike many of the conferences everyone listening and we all probably go to in our past careers or other lives where you just go, you listen to people with slides, a PowerPoint, whatever it may be, it feels like a college lecture all over again. Some people kind of dread the conference experience. It's always been our goal to create an in-person workshop experience. And I, intentionally use the word workshop instead of conference because I think workshop represents something a little bit more interactive. And so we just hosted our most recent workshop in beautiful Portland, Maine. And thanks again for the wonderful ice cream recommendation up that way. But the win for me, and I do like celebrating wins. I don't like to put myself in the spotlight often, but when you have an event that runs seamless on the back end, thanks to a huge help from my team. But when you see the smiles across people's faces, just because they're meeting new people, they're getting actual takeaways, and they walk away at the end telling you, I learned this, I learned that. I can't wait to bring these skills back to the others at my team, at my brewery when I get back home. That's truly a win for me. Because at the end of the day, I love conversations. I love learning, but I want to provide a space where people feel welcome and they can learn the skills to see greater success. So this event we recently had in Portland, it definitely was a win for me because building a community, the goal is to see as many people in our space, like I said, experience as much success as possible and to see our community grow and to see people walk away with these tools for greater success makes me feel all warm inside, not to get all sappy with it, but many people do describe the experience we put out at these workshops as almost summer camp for the beer industry. And think about summer camp growing up. It's a time you go into something as strangers, but you leave with the best of friends and contacts you can always reach out to who are dedicated to you, not just as whatever business hat you may be wearing, but for you as a person. I just love seeing people feel that positive at our events.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I think in the context of leadership, and you think about setting the tone from the top, it's your intentions. Like, what are you trying to create? You're trying to do something that's not what everyone assumes conferences are going to be because of their past experiences, but actually disrupting that a little bit and saying, no, I really want this to be interactive. I want this to be valuable. I want this to be an opportunity for people to connect. I love that. I'm curious. It's a great win. I'm curious what, if you don't mind sharing, or if you can think of any that you got from participants of what some of the takeaways were. I mean, what were some of the things that people were offering up as this was really mind shifting, or this was something that I can take back to my team?
Yeah, I think two words that come up a lot in the feedback we receive, people love the intimacy of it, and they also love how interactive it is. And,
Mm.
I do my best to set the tone for that. When we kick off each workshop, I always begin with an icebreaker. I mean, we did one a few years ago. I literally had everyone from across the room, a few hundred industry professionals, get in teams with strangers. And so often when we go to these events, you stick to the people you know. You get in your little circle, the people at your business, your brewery, and you don't meet people outside of your circle. So first off, flip the script on that immediately. I make people get in teams with strangers. And the first time we did this, I had people build a brewery out of kids' arts and craft supplies. So you get in a team with people you don't know. You have a shared objective. You present it to the rest of the community, and there is, a takeaway from it. It's not just all fun and games,
Yeah.
but that's something people have appreciated from this. We get them out of their element pretty quickly, but that sets the tone for the rest of the event, which they know they're going to meet new people. They're going to learn new things in a different format than they're used to. They kind of put their guard down a little bit and be like, okay, this is going to be experience unlike anything I've probably been in before, but I'm here for it. And that's what I truly love about this.
Yeah. Well, and I'm gathering then the takeaway that they're then leaving that with is creating that same environment and within their own teams. That level of comfort, that level of open-mindedness, that growth mindset that even though maybe these are people that I don't work with, directly day to day, there's still value in developing the relationship with them. And I love that. I think there's a lot of that, especially as we start to think about the silos within organizations and then even some remote team working, depending on where they are in the industry. If people are open to the value of being, and I'm almost swapping these days discomfort with unfamiliarity. So it's not even that you're uncomfortable, it's just unfamiliar. And it sort of softens it a little bit. These are just unfamiliar relationships or situations or circumstances that you find yourself in. If these individuals who attended the event in Portland then go back to their team with that mindset, it's contagious. The whole organization sees the value in that and hopefully incorporates that into how they operate and into their culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing we talked a lot about at this workshop was, not just understanding your guests or your customers, but understanding your team, their expectations, what motivates them, and how you can best interact with them to help them achieve their goals and make them feel empowered to be part of the bigger picture. It's so important.
Yeah. And even in our conversation, I still remember it. We were talking about how what you just described, that the sort of the commitment to developing that within your own organization with your team members then is felt across the bar, from the team, from the employees to then the patrons and to your customers. They are experiencing that because that's a vibe, that's a culture that you've created very authentically, very consistently in your organization, to where it's inevitable that it's going to be felt through your product as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it starts at the top, it trickles down through the managers, it goes to the bartender, it goes across the bar. And when you have that vibe, as you mentioned, and people come to breweries these days, of course they want delicious beer, but they want that vibe. There's so
Mm-hmm.
much that goes into the experience. I mean, while beer is the anchor of our industry, it's about the engagement that happens there. It's about the atmosphere that's so important. We're all intentionally craving unique experiences. And your team, and whether you're at a brewery or any other kind of business, can be the one who's the best advocate for what your company's doing to get people to not just buy in, but want to be a part of it and feel that sense of community.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, what a great event. So do you do these annually?
We do 2 a year,
Oh,
I'm
wow.
in a weird cycle of in-person, virtual, in-person, virtual events where we're just constantly doing something to provide value. And yeah, I'm lucky enough to travel across the country. I was in Portland, Maine recently, be in San Diego in the fall. It's really just a cool excuse for me to visit neat cities that I've never been to before and
Yeah,
see great people.
absolutely. That's so great. And I hope they continue to grow, and I'm sure they will with a community of 17,000. I mean, I think as you start to experience those people who have gone to these events and come back feeling so refreshed and re-energized by, wow, this is a community and an industry of passion, of, passionate people. And there are ways that we can really share this with our teams and then share this ultimately with our customers through the way that, and I love the fact that CBP is all about professional and personal growth and development. I think it's not one or the other. It's very much a both and, because of, just like you said, this isn't just X's and O's, zeros and ones. This is people who are creating a product and an experience for other people. So if you create this environment at these conferences where people can actually connect and they can let their guard down and they can see the value of just being themselves and connecting with other people who share this passion, they get to then go back to wherever they've come from and share that with their teams.
And it's all about the connection. I mean, so often, we talk to those doing similar things in our own communities, but we're not going to share our best strategies for success with the brewery or the business right next door. And we have found that so often these brewery owners and managers, and this applies to so many industries, they're not connecting with people just like them in similar roles across the country. And that's been the true value, just bringing people together to learn in a safe space. They can ask questions because when you bring a taproom manager from Virginia in a room with one from California, they're much more likely to open up and have productive conversations that'll benefit both parties involved.
Yeah, 100%. It makes me think back to, I spent 2 decades doing professional development, executive education for lawyers. And, when I was at Harvard, we were doing these programs. And of course, the content was, top notch and it was out of this world valuable. And I still think that the attendees who were there and paying good money to be there from around the world were getting more value, arguably more value, during the coffee breaks, during the happy hours, during the networking dinners, because the content was necessary, it was part of the structure of the event, but actually it was the ability to connect with other peers in their industry or from around the world, that they were then leaving the event thinking, okay, I've got maybe a page and a half of really quality notes, but man, I've got this connection and that connection and this connection. I can actually have really meaningful conversations with people who get where I'm coming from. And it's not of a competitive nature, but much more of a collaborative one.
And what you just said, it sounds so simple, but so often we get so busy in the daily routine of just running a business, we don't take the time to build those relationships. And the trajectory, Hakeem, that we see at our events, and I love this so much, but once again, it just sounds like common sense, but we're not putting the time and effort to do it. What we see is people meet day one as strangers. Day two, they get to know each other a little bit better, perhaps over the shared love of, enjoying a pint together. Then day three, they've got that contact they can always reach out to. And it's so important to take off the hat we wear at our businesses sometimes and just connect on that personal level.
Yeah. I tell clients this all the time when we're talking about it, and we always discuss the power of slowing down and creating space. And before we create anything in service of whatever results or outcomes we're trying to produce, space is where it all starts. And what you're doing through this community and through these events is creating space and an environment where people can connect. Makes me think back to mine and my wife's wedding that we had. We had it in Maine. And when we were discussing what we wanted to do, there are always, the sort of traditional approaches. We ended up renting out a kids' summer camp, and we had 4 days of wedding festivities. And the reason why we wanted to do that was because of what you just described. And again, this can be applied to any environment, any industry, any event or group of gathering of individuals. But it was this idea that everyone's going to arrive as strangers. Some are not going to know each other. They're going to have that first day of meeting each other, and then they're all going to share a drink. And we're going to party the first night, and then all of a sudden we're going to get to know each other. And then there's going to be the wedding, and there's not going to be a groom side or a bride side. It's just going to be family, and it's just going to be everybody there, intermingled and mixed, celebrating what we're here to celebrate. And that just made for such an amazing 4 days together. And I don't know if I ever thought about this way, but in all of the conferences and all of the events and all the programs that I have delivered throughout my career, that was always an underlying goal, was just to create this opportunity for people to connect. And I think you doing that in an industry where passion is paramount, but allowing also people to take that passion not just for the brewing and not for the industry, but for the ability to connect with customers, with
For
colleagues,
the
with
people,
with
Hakeem, for the
people.
people.
That's right. Exactly right. So I'd love to hear a little bit about where you started, where you're from, what your journey has been like to get you to where you are now, leading this community the way you do.
Yeah, Hakeem, I wasn't in the beer industry before about 7 years ago. For a long time, I ran a food service. I got to work at stadiums and arenas all across the country, serving fun, family-friendly snacks at everything from baseball games to monster truck shows. And When I was doing that, I learned very quickly. I started working there literally when I was 16 years old and worked there for quite some time. It was about more than the baseball game. It was about more than the hamburger or hot dog. It was about creating memorable experiences that people craved. And like yourself, I'm always thinking of crazy ideas. So even while I was running this food service, my wife was pretty used to me throwing out these off the wall things that could be fun to do the day. And the food service, I wasn't the owner, but I ran the company. I made the decisions. It was a lot like it was my own business,
Mm.
but I wasn't, once again, the person who owned the company. So one day, my wife, Stacy, she's working at an animal hospital. I go, Stacy, I've got this great idea for a business. I texted her on our iPhones and she goes, the dots come in, the dots come back. The dots come in, the dots come back. Then I said, it's going to be a mystery shopping company for breweries. And I'm just waiting for her to, say her response. And the dots keep moving, they go away. She texts me back, that's stupid. So, what does anyone do when you have an idea that you think is a winner and someone challenges you? You do it. You dive right in. And, I planned the business, I bought the website. I had no idea what was going to happen. But at this point in 2017, I knew the craft beer industry was changing. And, I loved traveling for beer. I was a home brewer at the time. And I knew, though, it was about more than just beer. So I literally launched a mystery shopping company for breweries when there was half as many breweries as there are today to really focus on the experience side of things. And as I was, in the early months of this company, one thing that I was shocked about was there wasn't a place specifically on social media where people working in the beer industry were coming together. Sure, there was a few conferences a year, statewide, national level, a few forums, but they weren't terribly active. So this led me to simply create Craft Beer Professionals as a Facebook community where I was the only person, in July of 2017, and that just started the journey of growing this organization, meeting a ton of really wonderful people on the industry partner side and the brewing side, and really just waking up every day trying to learn something that I could pass along to those that I interact with.
Wow, I love that. So, what did you learn in the launching the mystery shopper business that you were then able to take and modify to create a business out of this Facebook group to what it is now?
Well, we say business out of the Facebook group. It wasn't a business for quite some time.
Yeah.
Even when I launched it in early 2017, I thought that Craft Beer Professionals would be the more valuable of the two brands, but I honestly didn't know how. And I spent a lot of time essentially just moderating, managing, curating a lot of content for this community because I love doing it. It
Mm.
wasn't bringing in any revenue, but I knew there was value for people. And I've really never thought about it until you asked a question. But when I first launched Secret Hopper, I was essentially an outsider in the beer industry. I had a few friends who worked at breweries, but I didn't know people. I hadn't spent many years in it like many people had at that point in time. So one thing that I did, I was like cold calling people. I was doing just very cold outreach to brewery owners and managers, almost just selling them on what I was trying to do.
Mm.
And I learned very, very quickly, one, that wasn't a good approach. And two, it was a waste of my time. And three, beer is all about education. Whether you're talking about educating the guest or the other side of the bar, or just trying to educate other industry professionals, no one in this industry wants to be sold to. And
Mm.
that's something we've really taken from, I guess, my secret hopper learnings, brought it into Crappy Professionals. And that's the approach we really try to do. Everything we do within Crappy Professionals, whether our community online or in person, we want it to feel authentic. We want it to be educational. We don't want anything to feel like a sponsored ad. We want something to offer value or some sort of insight that's, can help someone see greater success, whether once again in our Facebook community or when they go meet people face to face. So it's truly about those relationships and about just strictly education, because the more I can learn, the more others in the industry can learn, the more we can learn together, the more successful we truly will be.
Yeah. And I think that's what draws people in. I want to go back to just to sort of highlight something you said much earlier, which was when you were working in those stadiums doing food services, you mentioned working in the business like it was your own, even though it wasn't your own. And I think that's such an interesting thing to highlight for listeners because that's the intrapreneur entrepreneur idea that you sometimes hear talked about. There's the entrepreneur who's out there building and launching, their own business, their own product or services. There's the entrepreneur, who is an individual who works as a member of an organization, as an employee of an organization or a company, but treats it as if it's their own. And there's something extremely valuable about that, because one, it just sort of shows that entrepreneurial spirit, one. And the other piece is, I think that it allows you to gain a great deal of satisfaction and fulfillment from the effort that you put into building someone else, quote unquote, someone else's brand, because it's not your own business, but you put your effort in, you put your whole self into it as if it were your own. What was it about you that had you operate that way?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to when I was just a kid working for the company. I was selling snow cones at minor league baseball games for 30 cents a pop. Or for 30 cents commission is what I would receive. So the
Yeah.
harder I worked, the more money I would make at an early age. So when I was in high school, I realized I could make a ton more than other students, in my class by simply putting the work in. And I loved it because I would go into work motivated to sell as many snow cones or cotton candy to people at a baseball game as I physically could. And I would make nice paychecks. I could buy things for myself. I learned that the value of hard work existed
Mm,
from an early age for me. And I soon began to take on, managerial responsibilities for the company. And what I would see was the more successful the company was, the more successful I could be. And it kind of was vice versa as well, because it gave me opportunity. When I first got involved with this company, it was based out of the Hampton Roads area of Virginia. But we had goals to expand it outward. And when I was able to expand it outward, it actually gave me more opportunities to grow myself as a leader. Instead of just managing a team of 10 people at a minor league baseball stadium, it took me to stadiums across the Midwest where I would go into an event hiring 100 people to work for me on a Saturday who I've never met before. And the challenge was, how can we make this a win for everyone involved? And I love to see the benefit of hard work. And, some people get really stagnant with their jobs and they just go through the motions. For me, I could never do that because I wanted everyone involved to see greater success. So I looked at every day of work as a unique challenge, not only better myself, but better the lives of everyone around me by, teaching them a new skill, helping them see greater success. At the end of the day, by all of us feeling empowered to play our role, the team would see the, I guess the efforts of all the hard work together.
yeah, you are hitting so many leadership bells here. It's just like going off in my head. It's this is great, Andrew. I love this because what you're describing is self-leadership. What you're describing is this understanding of self enough to know that you aren't motivated by, here's your paycheck to the penny, what you're going to get, but actually seeing that your ability to put in an effort and that be reflected in what you earn, that was attractive to you. And as you know, we know there are many people who would not find that to be comfortable or to be aligned with how they like to work or how they earn. And I think as you talk about how the business grew, you grew, and that you were able to see these as opportunities for you to grow as a leader, what were some of the things that you started to notice about yourself or that you ended up being able to learn going from managing 10 locally to 100 elsewhere? What came up for you? What were you taking away from those opportunities?
Yeah, there's a couple that stand out immediately. I mean, the first was I needed to use data to make decisions.
Mm,
When I was running these events locally, they were easy operations. I could show up, maybe I wouldn't prepare as much as I should, but I would have a way to catch up just because the scale of these events was a lot less. But then I go and run an event with 50,000 people in a, essentially a major league football stadium. I couldn't just go into it blind, not knowing what to expect. I had to plan ahead. I had to use the data I had from past years to rely on how I was going to succeed in the future. So it taught me the value of data, which I do use a lot in the decision-making process I have for both Secret Hopper and craft beer professionals. But also another thing that I still preach about a ton these days, you got to find ways to motivate people. For everyone on my team, I wanted to get to know them as a person, whether they were another manager on the team, whether they were just a 16-year-old who was there because it was their first job, whether it was a college student who was looking at this as a way they could kind of gain responsibility, potentially become a manager and use this on their next resume. I love the aspect of getting to know people. And I truly didn't think about this back then because probably it's just a part of my personality where I like asking questions. I love getting to know people. But at the end of the day, when you take the time to get to know people, it takes the work aspect away from it sometimes. And what I mean by that, Hakeem, is so often you go to work and it feels like work. You don't look at it as something that's going to advance your career or just have a greater impact on your life. But when you take yourself out of the work mindset and look at it as, how are we going to succeed together? I think it can make it more fun. And what I did by get to know a lot of these people was I did the same for them. They got excited for the events, for the experience. Sure, they were getting paid to be there, but there's a different level of it too that took off our work hats sometimes and simply, hey, we're here, we're people with a common goal. And the more we like each other, the better we can succeed together. And I think, when you look at the beer industry, and I talk to a lot of taproom managers nationwide, if you and I are working behind a bar together, Hakeem, and we don't like each other, maybe we don't know each other, we've never really taken the time, we're probably not going to work too efficiently together.
Mm,
But if you're working with a team, whether it's behind the bar or in another industry, the more you have that rapport and mutual understanding of one another, you don't have to be the best of friends, but you have to understand each other, know each other in a more personal level. The whole organization will see greater success. And that's something I learned from the early food service days, something I think equally applies to beer and other industries.
yeah. God, there's so much gold in that, Andrew. I think as I'm listening to you, one, it's so refreshing to hear that because whether it's food service, snow cone scooping, beer industry, law and medical and finance, I mean, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. What kept coming up for me as I was listening to you is that, wow, this is so on point with what leadership's about. One, you're not diminishing the value of data and the sort of quantifiable pieces of leadership that go into making decisions and choosing a certain course of action or direction strategically for a business. That is absolutely a value and is necessary part of it. And you really double down on, but these are still people at the end of the day. This is not data that's collected from robots, just producing results on a daily basis. And the piece that keeps coming up for me in my mind is how many leaders out there don't get this and see this as a nice to have, see this as something that they immediately think to themselves, I don't have time for that. I can't invest that kind of energy or time or attention into every single person or everybody that I have interaction with. We have things we need to get done. And the fact that you're highlighting the value of understanding people, whether it's two people behind the bar or 100 people working a major league game, to understand that at the end of the day, and I talk about this with my clients, I talk about this in leadership training workshops that we do, to understand the people that you work with, especially as a leader, to create that as a vibe, as an energy that you model as a leader, creates the results that you're ultimately working for. This is not in spite of or in place of. These are actually accelerators of the results that you're trying to achieve, making sure that everybody knows each other, everyone's working on the same team, off the same information, rowing in the same direction. It's crucial that people connect and people understand each other as human beings.
In many ways, it comes down to how are you succeeding with getting your team excited?
Mm,
Because that really refers to understanding each person in your organization and customizing the experience for them that's going to be best for everyone. Because as we talked about, everybody has different goals. And whether it was a sporting event or in the beer industry, when I come into these events and I'm meeting people for the first or 100th time, when we start that day is how can we make the day a success for everybody? And how can I get you to want to be part of that? And when you understand, the little things that are going to motivate each person there, and you not necessarily use them, but take the time to build those relationships,
yeah.
everyone's going to be more empowered, everyone's going to be more excited, and it benefits everyone involved.
Yeah, yeah. It's about leveraging. That's the word that came to mind, is really leveraging the way in which people are motivated in their unique ways, because you're so right. I mean, I think back to this survey that you did, in the industry regarding people's levels of satisfaction and engagement, and what motivates them and what they see as valuable. And of course, the various selections were there because some people are motivated by compensation. Other people are motivated by the people that they work with, or the development opportunities, or the educational opportunities that they have. And when you can understand where an individual is coming from. I mean, this is why that, and I might have even said it when we had our last discussion, but it was this idea of the age old, well, I treat people the way I want to be treated, and swapping that for, I actually treat people the way they want to be treated. Because each individual has their own experiences, their own history, their own definition of what success is or what motivates them. To understand that, and again, this is not like you got to have an hour and a half long conversation with every single person, before you start the workday, but giving time and space for that to be something that naturally occurs, then just makes it so much easier, as you said, to excite and motivate people.
And
Love
it
it.
begins with a conversation.
That's right.
I'll give a little bit about me, you'll give a little bit about you, then we go back and forth, and we're just slowly opening it up. And that's
Yeah.
where it starts with these relationships.
That's right. And it's a cultural thing. I mean, I've seen this with a lot of my clients, and unfortunately, a lot of my clients understand the value of this, at least conceptually. How to implement that sounds a lot more challenging. But as I described, I uncomplicate leadership so that leadership doesn't feel like, as you were describing, this sort of burdensome, worrisome, complicated, dramatic thing. I want people to actually enjoy, as you're describing, and I love it. That's why it's so refreshing, but to enjoy leadership. See this as an opportunity to learn about people, and through them learn about yourself, and then actually be able to tap into what motivates them and inspires them and gets them to show their best selves every day. And when you do that, like you said, this goes beyond efficiency. Now you're talking about innovation, you're talking about growth as an organization, you're talking about, the monumental success, because everybody understands one another and they're able to operate from that place. So as you think about now and maybe we'll talk specifically about the beer industry more broadly, what are you finding from coming out of Portland, even, for example, people were really hungry for or excited about as conversations kind of, evolved throughout the several days you guys spent together?
It's a word you just said a minute ago, innovation.
Mm,
This industry right now is all about innovation. If you're not innovating, you're falling behind. So, looking at Portland, but just in our industry in general, people were looking for new things that they could do to see greater success and greater revenue. Whether we're talking about adding different beverages to the lineup that they're serving in their tap rooms and their breweries, or different events they can host, or better skills they can apply to running their business as a leader. People were looking for innovative strategies to see greater success because, years and years ago, and not even that far ago, let's say 7 years ago when I got into this industry, people had the philosophy, if you brew it, they will come. You could just make an okay product, run an okay business, and be, kind of successful. That no longer flies anymore.
mm,
Arguably running a strong business is your competitive advantage. I want to say that again because I think it's so true in so many industries. Running a strong business can be your competitive advantage. And it comes down to your people and your ability to innovate. So I think people came hungry to Portland to find those little tips and tricks that they could, get the gears in their brain turning on how they could better innovate at their brewery. Because something that works here in Virginia might not work for someone out in the West
mm.
Coast, but it at least will get you thinking about, that's an interesting idea, but will it work here? Okay, well, maybe not. But what could work here that we could use to see greater success in years to come?
Yeah. And I love the fact that you said tricks and tips, not tricks and tips to innovate, but tricks and tips to get your mind thinking about innovative solutions, to create innovative ideas, or to create even a culture of innovation within your organization. Because a lot of people, and this is true for any industry, any entrepreneur, they're looking for, the silver bullet, that sort of secret ingredient that all of a sudden they can add and poof, everything's transformed. And it's really not about that. It's really about a mindset. And innovation doesn't come from, you flipping through a book about innovation or innovative ideas in the craft brewing industry, and then boom, there it is on page 70, the one idea that's going to change it all. It's really about opening the conversation and opening your minds, and especially within an organization of a number of different people, diversity of ideas and experiences and observations and understanding of where they're all coming from, that then adds into maybe this one innovative idea because of everyone's contributions. And I think that's what I'm hearing is when people come to an event like what you did in Portland, and it's a safe, open space for people just to throw things at the wall and see what sticks, and have people question and get excited about and offer up other ideas to support, then you walk out of there thinking not, oh, okay, I've got it. This is what I wanted, this one thing to take away. But actually, no, I got the gears moving right now. This is putting me in a place where when I get back to my team, I really want to infuse this into how we look at what we do.
Oh yeah, and I love throwing spaghetti, Hakeem. And there's, an exercise I like to do. It's an impact effort matrix. So think like a quadrant. Like on the x-axis, it's going to be the impact. How much value is this going to bring to your business? On the y-axis, it's going to be effort. How much effort is going to take to implement this? And I've done this on a wide range of brewing topics with people in the industry. And let's just think like brewing events, for example. Let's say you want to plan an all-day festival. You're going to have 10 bands. You're going to have 10 new releases. Something that like that is probably going to take a ton of effort, but maybe it will have a huge impact. So you got to look at that. Something like that is going to take a lot of work to do, but it will have the reward. At the end of the day, what we want to find is what can have ideally, the most impact on your bottom line and success of the company in the least effort to get there. So what I'll encourage people to do is just brainstorm a billion ideas of every event you could potentially do in your tap room and put them on this impact effort axis and kind of see where they fall. If something's going to take a ton of effort and have little impact on your brewery or business, scrap it. Don't do it right now. Something that might take a lot of effort, a lot of impact, like an all-day festival, like I mentioned, that might be something you want to start planning for and know it'll take a while to get there. But something that's going to be easy to implement and have a lot of reward, guess what that is? That's something you need to do right now because it's going to help you see greater success.
That's
It's just a
that.
fun activity because it's
Yeah.
all about quantity, and you'll get to the quality by
Yeah.
throwing that spaghetti, but it's
Yeah.
getting your gears turning, getting your team involved, the thinking of everything we could potentially try. And
Yeah.
I have the philosophy of trying everything once. Try it at least once. You've got that slow Tuesday night at your brewery, your restaurant, whatever business you might be running. Try it because worst case, you're going to have the same customers as you would on an average Tuesday. But maybe in that perfect world, you have this crazy idea that just hits with your audience and it resonates, and you have a packed tap room or packed business on that Tuesday night when it ideally or otherwise might have been just a slow night.
Yeah. I love that. That's a great practical suggestion too, because it just frames it in a way where everything's a possibility. And I love talking about that with clients. I love talking about that in conversations like this. It's limitless possibilities. It's not to say that we're going to execute on it. At the end of the day, we'll evaluate whether or not it's worth our effort and if it's going to have the impact that we'd love for it to have. But I love this idea of effort and impact because then you get to dump everything out. Let's just slap it up there. I'm almost picturing it like on this big dry erase board or this big wall, and everyone gets, their stack of post-it notes and they're writing their idea and they're just smacking it up there on the wall,
So
thinking
Hakeem,
about,
I have the pictures to prove it because
I
that's
believe
what we
it.
do. When we
Yeah.
do it face to face, we have them write them all on Post-its. Then we pick like the top 10 that people vote on. Then we graph them on that impact effort matrix. Then you figure
Yeah.
out which ones you're going to do right now or which ones you're going to kind of work towards the future.
Love
Yeah,
it. Yeah, love it.
super
Because
interactive.
it gives people, again, I think we're all guilty of this, especially if we're, big thinkers and we love coming up with ideas and our minds are always working. We can overwhelm ourselves with the possibilities. And limitless possibilities is meant to be freeing, not paralyzing. And when you can create some structure around that, which is as basic as an XY axis, to say, here's how we can think about this. No wrong ideas, no bad ideas. Let's throw them up there and then let's evaluate whether or not we think that we want to put the effort or the resources into this. But I think when we talk about innovation, it's really about this mindset that allows us to be free of judgment or assumption or overthinking and just saying, look, put all that stuff to the side, free your mind for a little bit. What comes up? And I do this exercise for myself in the day. Sometimes I'll take a break in between meetings. I'll close my eyes. I'll sit for a minute just quietly and I'll think, what comes up for me? And whatever comes up for me is actually what's top of mind for me. That's something that I'm thinking about. And then I'll take action on that. And this is an exercise, especially in terms of business growth and sort of idea generation, where people get to say, I'm not just sticking it up on a blank wall and having no idea what we're doing with it. We can actually evaluate it based on this very simple idea of effort and impact. Love it.
And there's another value for it too, because when you bring your team in a room wherever you're doing this and get them involved, it lets them be part of the process. When it lets them feel like they're helping create something bigger than them. And people love to feel empowered. So I love it when I see groups of people engage in this activity together. And to go back to something we said earlier, if you just look at other things that are currently happening in your industry, say beer, for example, oh, what kind of events can we do? Well, the brewery down the street's doing a trivia night. Oh, let's do a trivia night. You just keep recycling the same old ideas. You're not thinking outside the box. That's why I believe there's so much value in learning from other industries and people, outside our normal familiarity, as you mentioned earlier. It's so important to have these conversations with other entrepreneurs, other people who want to get a little creative and see what we can build together.
Yeah, exactly. And you and I have spoke about this before. Getting outside the box also means actually literally getting outside of sometimes the box in which we are all working in, whether it be our home office or our brewery or our tap room or whatever it might be. But actually, this goes to another point, which is how valuable, I mean, and you have access to these professionals in this industry. How valuable is it to step away from the business at times and just connect as people so that these ideas can be formed not within the confines of, I mean, even the trivia example that you gave, maybe the trivia idea is coming to mind as the only idea because the brewery up the road is doing it, but also you're thinking about ideas while you're leaning on the bar in your own tap room versus being outside of that space and letting ideas come to you because you're in a different environment doing different things with people in a different way.
I mean, there's huge value in it. When I talk to breweries about just trainings, the interactions between their team members, first off, I find that breweries and lots of businesses don't have really regular meetings to go over important things. And
Mm,
whatever that agenda entails, a lot of breweries and other businesses don't have regular meetings that bring their team together. So bringing teams together is extremely important. I could go on to my philosophies on meetings now, but I think it's more fun to talk about not meetings. What I mean by not meetings is when you leave your place of business and you take off your brewer hat, you take off your taproom manager hat, you take off your finance hat, and you just do something together and get to know someone on a personal level. Because that's where it starts. That needs to be part of your company structure to have those interactions, facilitate a space where people get to connect on a more personal level. Because it's what we really started this conversation with relationships and
yeah,
connecting because that can have huge value on your business, whatever it
yeah.
may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just thinking, even like I can imagine a whole team going out and doing a rafting trip for the day and doing something where they just get to spend the day doing something different together. And in there, they either come up with some ideas randomly together because they're talking about a place they went or something they did, and like, why don't we do that? Oh, we should do that. What or they make a connection with, the place they have lunch afterwards, and they say, oh, we should collaborate on something. I mean, like it just I love creating opportunities, and I think you're so right. And I know I could spend a lot of time on the value of meetings, but also, sort of the philosophy around meetings and how those are managed. But I think leaders often struggle with this idea of space outside of the business because they're then not working on the business or working in the business. And actually, that time is incredibly well spent when you're together because it is in service of how you are then going to connect and how you're going to work together, but also in service of this idea generation and innovation because of being outside of your normal environment just opens you up to new conversations, new ideas, new relationships, new connections, and all of that. So, absolutely.
Mhm.
So, thinking about what CBP has for the second half of 2024. Anything exciting coming up that you're really looking forward to?
Yeah, a couple things. So I live in Virginia. I'm in Norfolk, Virginia. I love Virginia. Virginia has the 11th most breweries in the country. We even have more than Oregon. Sorry if anybody's listening in Oregon. Oregon has a great reputation for being a great beer state, but we've got a few more. So Virginia has never had its own craft beer conference. So we're putting together the inaugural Virginia Brewers Conference this September. I mean, it just ties into the theme of how lucky I am, Hakeem. I get to spend my days talking to people like you, talking to brewers, talking to other industry partners, and we're bringing together the first time in I guess, Virginia beer history, an opportunity for everyone to come together in Richmond, Virginia. So for me right now, I love the planning side of things. So I'm planning that event, which we have in September, but I'm so looking forward to, giving people the opportunity to learn together. It's going to be a blast. So that's one highlight for my year. I've got another workshop in San Diego in December, and never been to San Diego before, so that's going to be pretty exciting to visit a new place, but also,
Awesome.
get to do it with other industry professionals.
How cool. What are you planning for in Richmond or San Diego that would be different than what you did in Portland?
Yeah, that's a great one. So for Richmond, one of the things that I love most about this industry, and it was almost like a pre-pandemic thing that happened a lot, is bottle shares. Bottle shares are when you and I and other people get together, we all bring a few, we have smaller cups, we crack them and share them, and it just starts so many conversations because that's the giving aspect of the industry. People just want to share sometimes, and we definitely want to drink delicious beer together. So what we're going to be doing to kind of close out the event in Virginia, in Richmond, Virginia, is we're having a closing bottle share. It kind of brings us back to our early roots, the industry. We're inviting everyone who's going to be attending to bring something they're proud of, to share it with everyone else, to get feedback and enjoy those moments together. And that's something, we've never done before. It kind of breaks from, the traditional script we use of just going to a brewery and having a reception. I think this is going to be much more intimate, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it and seeing how it plays out.
Oh, that sounds so exciting. It makes me think back to my wedding again because I had our wedding was in Maine. We had people coming from all over the country, and we encourage everybody to do that. So people are smuggling, wrapping beers and six packs and shirts and towels and throwing them in their bags. I had a buddy of mine who was brewing his own beer in Austin, Texas. He sent 2 pony kegs through
Oh my gosh.
Greyhound to Portland, where I picked them up, and we had just this array of different beers from all over the country for our Friday night welcome barbecue, which we did. And it was very much that sort of bottle share mentality where everyone was telling each other where they got this from and what they love about it. And it was just this bonding opportunity where everyone had been together already. I can only imagine what that's going to be like, to wrap up a conference.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. And that's one of the things I love most about working in the beer industry, the beverage industry, is like, you can be a stranger and you and I could sit next together each other in a tap room, but we're probably there for the shared love of that experience together, and it's going to start the conversation. And you have to start these conversations with your guests, with your staff, with other people like you, with people completely outside of your box, because when you start a conversation, that's how we grow.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Do you have the dates already for that one in September?
Yeah, you can come join us in Virginia this September 16th, 17th, and 18th. I
Very
don't have a
cool.
place for you to sleep, but I would love for you to join us.
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, I'll keep that in mind. I love that. And I've been to Richmond. I like Richmond a lot. And then there's the one in San Diego. Very cool. So as you think about, and I love this conversation because there's been so many leadership concepts woven in and out of what we've talked about, and we haven't even drilled down on. Again, this is what I love about the work that I get to do and the community that you're building. This isn't about leadership skill building 101. This is about leadership as a way of being, sort of leadership as an approach to relationships, as an approach to business. Leadership is something that we get to enjoy. Leadership is something that I see as a privilege, and it's a way to expand ourselves, to expand those around us, through our awareness and our learning and our knowledge. But as you think about people who are listening in, what is for leadership a skill or attribute that you think people really would benefit from focusing on if they want to become better leaders?
For me, I think it's pretty simple. I'm so curious, Hakeem. I just want to learn. I just want to know. And something that I would encourage other leaders to do is ask questions. Literally, just ask questions. If someone says something you're not familiar with, ask the question. If you're interviewing someone or you're getting to know someone, take the time to ask questions about them so you can know them better. There is not a bad question. And I think I've seen a lot of success and I've learned so much by simply having these conversations where I'm in a place where I can get to know people better in those conversations, and just by being curious and wanting to know that desire, that thirst to know, to build relationships. As I mentioned earlier, I'm super lucky to be in a place where I get to interact with a lot of people. And if I didn't ask questions, oh my gosh, I feel like I would be years behind. It's just that shared knowledge we all are part of. That's the most important thing. And I'm lucky to be a part of it just by simply asking those questions and being curious.
Yeah, well, I can attest to your curiosity and your great questions, having been in conversation with you before. And I think, Andrew, curiosity, I think that is it for me as well. I mean, there are lots of other things that are extremely valuable, but if you can start from that place of curiosity, genuine curiosity. And I was having this conversation the other day with someone. I said, if leaders can adopt this approach of seeking to understand before being understood, that is actually very, very powerful for a leader, because leaders feel, once they get into a leadership role, oh, it's about me telling people. It's about me demonstrating why I'm in this leadership role. I have to assert my power. I have to assert my leadership. And I said, no, 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 you're just in a leadership role. Imagine being curious. Imagine seeking to understand before being understood. You're going to learn so much about other people, about, operations, about your business, about your industry, and then about yourself, so that when you do share from that place, it's a lot less of telling and it's a lot more sharing.
And at the end of the day, I want to be like a sponge. You
Mm,
know, it's almost like Jeopardy. I loved Jeopardy growing up. Like I would just
same.
soak in so much random knowledge. But what I want to be able to do is when I'm in a conversation, I want to be able to pass something along that could be valuable to someone else. And I wouldn't get all that knowledge and information if I didn't ask questions.
And I'll wrap it up with this, because I think this is just, it just embodies what you are clearly about and what your community is about, is, and then where it started is offering value, giving that value to your community and letting what will be grow from that. Because when you're giving value, and that's really your core intent, is I just want to offer up something that be of value, it brings people in. And the 17,000 members is a testament to how you've created that community of value sharing, not just from you to them, but amongst one another and back to you through your curiosity and through your ongoing learning. So you mentioned the September event in Richmond. There's the event later in the fall in San Diego. Yeah. Um, Tell us a little bit about where people can learn more about the work that you're doing and get some of the specifics if they want to engage in the community.
Yeah, everyone. The organization is Craft Beer Professionals. We're on Facebook. If you're also in the beer industry, feel free to join our community on Facebook. And for the Virginia Brewers Conference, it can be found at virginiabrewersconference.com. If you're in Virginia, you're just interested in being part of the industry. But one thing that I love, I love connecting with people outside of this industry as well. So if you have nothing to do with beer, but you just have a mindset that's also curious, I'd love to hop on the phone with anyone. So don't hesitate to reach out. Anyone listening, whether you're in beer or beyond, Andrew at craftbeerprofessionals.org, because there's so much we can learn from one another.
Yeah. And I will confirm, I have enjoyed every conversation we've had. There's always been some level of learning that I've enjoyed when we've been in conversation together. And they always leave me feeling refreshed and encouraged that there are people out there in the world who understand leadership the way that you do, who are creating community around these ideas and this philosophy. So thank you, Andrew, for being here. Thank you for all that you do and for making the time to be in conversation with me today.
Thank you for the opportunity, Hakeem. See you soon.
Yeah, looking forward to it. As always, I'd love to hear from you about the episode. What came up for you as you think about leveling up your leadership game? And please, if you enjoyed the episode, I encourage you to like and subscribe. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on LinkedIn at Hakeem A. Lakhdar or at lakhdarcoaching.com. Thanks for tuning in. Keep being great, and we'll see you next time.